This is the last episode in season 1 of the Freebirthing in Color movement, and today I have a beautiful conversation with Veladya. We get into speaking about her first pregnancy that started off in the care of an OB and medical midwife, but after the first few routine appointments with the OB, Veladya felt that there was something lacking from the care she was receiving. Veladya then attended a mother's retreat in the Caribbean at 27 weeks pregnant and was opened up to the idea of birthing free of the medical system. With that planned intention of birthing at home, 3 days had passed and the energy in Veladya's birth space shifted. She ended up making the choice to get checked at the hospital with the hopes of signing herself out after assessment to continue birthing at home. Things didn't turn out the way they were originally planned, and Veladya birthed Aura in hospital, and then on top of that had to deal with interactions from CPS for 6 weeks into her postpartum time. All of the CPS stress was completely unnecessary, and in my opinion, has a large part to do with the fact that Veladya and her partner are people of color. Their treatment was unjust and racially fueled, but I will let Veladya speak to those moments in her story. And now, as Veladya prepares for her second baby to be born, the lessons that she learned from her first birth have well equipped her for her second. And lastly, submissions are always open, free to speak within this movement. If you want to share your birth story on a platform that celebrates you for who you are and the birth choices you've made, please reach out to me or fill out the submission form. All information can be found within the show notes below. Hello, Veladya. Welcome to the Freebirthing in Color podcast. I'm so grateful that you are here speaking with us today.
Hello, thank you so much. It is a privilege to be here.
Yes, amazing. I'm really excited to share your story because this is, as you said, before we were recording, that you didn't actually birth your baby at home, but that was the planned intention. And this is a really beautiful story to share because it still shows that no matter where you had birthed your baby, you were still in your power as you made the decision to leave your home and do so. And the planned intention was for that birth outside of the medical system. So this is, a very important story, I think, that needs to be shared as well, because you're in your power. You were making these decisions for yourself and your child, and not all planned births free of the medical system will end up being born at home, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for affirming my little version of my free birth journey. It was a wild ride. Aura was born after 3.5 days.
Wow. Yeah.
Of riding the waves.
Yeah.
And so the pregnancy.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Before we get started in that story,
okay.
That's okay. You get excited too. So before we get into there, let me just ask you these 2 questions. One, what is your ancestry and lineage that you're passing on to your children?
Yes. My ancestry and lineage is 50% Borinquen, which is the indigenous name, the island in the Caribbean that's now called Puerto Rico. So Boricua. And then the other 50% is African American, or Black as we call it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for that. You're the first Puerto Rican woman that I've had on the show.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it because there's so many women from, the Caribbean islands. I've had women from Australia. I've had, women. I'm starting to get all over the world, and it's just so beautiful to really see this flourishing web of women birthing in this really beautiful way. So
yeah, representation needed, because our families, our elders, let me say free birth, they're like, what?
Yeah, totally. They're just like, that's what we were doing at home, normal. We didn't even name it anything. It was just birth.
Yes.
Okay, so now this question, number 2, where does your motherhood journey begin?
I would lightly say that my motherhood journey began when my little brother Elin was born. He's almost 10 years younger than me. So I got to experience being a caretaker in a way, bringing him on the diapers, changing his diapers, making the bottles, and holding him when he was crying, and holding him for my mom all the time. And even to this day, we don't really have a brother-sister relationship. It's more of a caretaker, relationship when we speak, in the ways that he asks for my guidance and my presence in our relationship. It's very different from me and my brother, who are 2 years apart. Like, it's just a very different um, angle. But my motherhood journey really started with Aura, with my first daughter.
Mm.
I'm not going to pretend that it is anything like what I had with my little brother, or what I've had with all the many animals I have, or nieces, nephews, anything. This is when my motherhood journey began, 2020, which was a spicy time to become a mother. May 2020
Yeah.
is when she was born. And well, I guess motherhood began in 2019 when I became pregnant in September of that year. When I
Mhm.
found out I was pregnant is really when the floodgates just opened.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. And then, so once you found out you were pregnant, how did you decide to birth outside of the medical system? Or did you start in the medical system and then kind of realize this isn't for me? Because I know you have a very holistic background with the work that you do, but I know many women that are like that, but then they still choose to use the medical system when they get pregnant. So how did that come to be for yourself?
Totally. It's funny, I don't think I really thought about it that much.
Hmm.
Um, how deeply ingrained the medical system actually was in me, in my mind, and in my spirit. I planned to have a home birth. I immediately hired a licensed midwife, a wonderful Black woman who had done many, many, many home births, and who had attended many home births. And that was my plan, was for her to come to our home and do that. But even though I had her, I still went to an OB's office to get like official confirmation of pregnancy, just in case my little plastic test wasn't real, and to, do all of the stuff that they wanted me to do there. I don't really know why, looking back on it. I guess I was just going through the motions. I was excited. I was actually excited to go to the appointments and get that attention, but I didn't end up going through with all of it. It was the first couple of appointments, and then I realized how, like, transactional it felt. I thought
Okay.
it would be more exciting to everyone
Hmm.
involved.
Hmm.
The OBs and nurses, everyone, they see this all day, every day. They're not as excited as you are. It's
Yeah.
very normal and almost seemed boring to them. So I only attended the first couple of appointments until I was really like, okay, I think I'm going to hand over this entire prenatal care to
Hmm.
my midwife
Hmm.
after the first maybe like 10 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's very, as you say, um, like you just do it because it is very ingrained within us as women because that's all we see is like, oh, you get pregnant, you go to the doctor tells
Yep.
you that you're pregnant, and then you just start this like cascade of appointments and testing and all of these things. And it really does just seem like, yeah, that's what you have to do, quote unquote, when you're pregnant. So hearing you say that going to these OB appointments and they're just very stale and nobody's really excited for you, that's really heartbreaking. It really
Yeah.
is because it's such a big life moment. You'd think, you're walking into the OB's office and everyone's like, yeah, you're pregnant.
Yeah.
And all right. And they're probably just like, sit down. We'll get to
Yep.
it in a minute.
Yes, they were so stale. That's exactly what I envisioned. I mean, my family, my friends, everyone is just celebrating with tears and excitement, and
Mhm.
they don't give a crap. I was like, why am I coming here?
Yeah. So then
Yeah.
after you left the OB and you went just fully on the midwife, what did that look like? Was there a difference in care that you noticed?
There was. It didn't feel as transactional at all, even though looking back, it was very quick. We would drive an hour and 15 minutes to get to her once a month. I guess it was around once a month,
Mhm.
which felt like a lot for like the 15, 20 minutes we would be there,
Yeah.
Um, it was exciting when we would listen to the Doppler. That
Mhm.
made it feel worth it because I got to hear the heartbeat every time. And
Mhm.
the OB ones weren't like that. It was like, This time it's a P test. This time it's a this. This time it's a this test, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
going into the midwife, every time was Doppler. So I got to hear the heartbeat. It made me feel more connected. Then
Mm-hmm.
I got to have like conversations with her that did seem to go deeper than those with the OB. You know, like she was a Black woman. So right off the top, I'm already feeling like I can speak to her like she's a member of my family. You know, she's not having to put on the professional tone and you speak a certain way, like we're speaking to each other like human beings. It didn't feel like there was much hierarchy there, you know, like she's really speaking to me with sweetness and love and yeah, like excitement. She was giving me that excitement. When I would express the excitement, I was not met with any staleness. She would bring it right back and share that with me. So that was fun, but it was still very quick. And a lot of times, like I would almost always say, like, wow, wish it wasn't such a long of a drive because it was like we went there, heard heartbeat, and that was pretty much it. Like got weighed. Like, does that really matter? I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, weight doesn't
No.
matter in pregnancy. It's the silliest thing that they do.
Yeah.
Mm. But yeah, so then how did you decide that that was, not good enough, really, and that you wanted to do this on your own, continuing throughout the rest of your pregnancy? And what did your partner think of this when did you make the decision together, or was it strictly you saying this is how it's going to go from now on?
Mm. I met a woman online who also taught free birth education. And it
Mm.
was the first time I ever heard of free birth, which is so silly because it's how all babies have come
Mm.
into the world since the beginning of time,
Yeah.
without hospitals and without medical intervention. But
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that us modern women have to hear it and it
Mm-hmm.
clicks in our brain. It's like a new thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I came across it. I came across another podcast. I came across some information on social media about it, went down a deep rabbit hole. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wow, look at this. Okay, this feels like me because everything else that I've ever done in my life, I definitely do it in the whole other direction than most of my peers are doing it. I've
Mm-hmm.
always been the black sheep in my family going the other way. And it's not even about that. It's about knowing in my heart what was right for me and then being a black sheep because of that, not just being a black sheep to be a black sheep. And I went to a retreat that was being hosted by these women that was a mother retreat, but it was being hosted by women who educate about home birth and free birth. So I went, it was in the Dominican Republic. I just thought this was going to be like a solo baby moon trip for me. I was 27 weeks pregnant, so I was getting there. And at this time, I still had my midwife, my licensed midwife, and everything. And I had heard a lot of podcast interviews. All the women there who were pregnant were like planning their free births, and they seemed totally liberated and brave and free. And I'm just connecting with them, and I'm so intrigued, like, oh my gosh, these women are so brave, but I'm really intrigued and I kind of want to do this. And it wasn't until the middle of the retreat, I sat down with the two founders. And, it was kind of like the two founders and like the pregnant women kind of gathered around them because we were kind of discussing our births. And I shared, well, I have a midwife, but she's really great. Like she's really great. I think she's like, she knows that even though she's licensed, I would like for her to be really hands off and not touch me and just be there and da 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 da. And one of the women shares, do you know that because she's licensed, she actually has to do certain checks on you? Like there are things to protect her own licensure that she must do that are probably in your contract. Do you know about those things? And it was really out of love. I remember it feeling like an attack at the time. Like, why is
Right.
this woman
Mm-hmm.
questioning my decision? But she was just asking, had I really looked deep enough? I'm so grateful
Yeah.
for that moment
Mm-hmm.
because she actually was like, hey, if you want to look through your contract together, you can pull it up right now. And I'm happy to show you some
Mm-hmm.
of the things that maybe you haven't clocked yet.
Right.
And so it was like with the other women at the table, and I felt like so much fear, but I brought up my contract with my midwife and I started to see these things that I didn't really clock. But from her point of view, she had attended hundreds of births, she had
Mm-hmm.
educated on free birth, like she knew what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew what most of the time doesn't really work for a woman who's requesting the things I'm requesting. Number one red flag that wouldn't have worked for me now, knowing how my birth went, was she had to transfer me within 12 hours of my water being broken.
Okay. Yeah.
It was just her like no negotiation rule.
Mm-hmm.
And we now know, or it took 3.5 days, I would have been transferred, and who knows what would have happened because she needed to take a while.
Mm-hmm.
That might have resulted in C-section because she just took a while. And not even a while in some people's eyes, 3.5 days. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, 3.5 days, when I hear that for a first-time mother, I'm kind of like, okay, yep, that's normal. That's
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
regular. Women's bodies need to move through the process of going through the first birth, and 3.5 days is totally normal in my eyes. I've
Exactly.
attended births that have been 6 days, and I'm like,
Yes.
yep, that's normal.
Yes. I wish I had known that at
Hmm.
the time of my birth and all before, because now I know it's totally normal. But
Hmm.
then, all you hear is hospital
Yeah.
stories, like my mom's, my aunt's, everyone's stories. And of
Hmm.
course, none of them were ever allowed to go that long in a
Oh
hospital.
gosh, no, it's always like you said, the cutoff with your licensed
Yeah.
midwife. If your baby's not born within 12 hours, then
All
they'll
right.
either get cut out or you will be forced to push and ruin
Yep.
your pelvic diaphragm because you've got to get that baby out. And it's,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So that was the first one. And
Mm.
she was like, would you be okay with that? And I guess I didn't really think about it being longer than 12 hours. I'd fantasized this beautiful 3-hour birth or something. So that was one. And then anyway, she just kept showing me a lot of things that were on there, that she was going to do cervical checks.
Mm.
That was just part of her thing, and blah, 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 a lot of things. She was going to be bringing medical equipment to the birth, even though I didn't really want that. She'd be bringing all this stuff, and she was going to have an assistant there. And I was not even, required is not the right word, but she was not required to introduce me to the assistant that was going to
Oh.
attend at all. It could
Mhm.
be someone brand new. Like she didn't know which assistant of hers was going to be at the birth. So I'm just not reading in this contract. There's going to be some other random woman that I don't even know there
Mhm.
in the name of training, which doesn't feel nice at all to have someone there learning when I'm going through that sacred process. So all these things really crashed and burned my fantasies.
Mhm.
I got really emotional at the table. But they really held it. They held it,
Mhm.
and it was almost just like a free birth boot camp right there at that dinner table. Some
Mhm.
of the women are drinking wine. We're all done with dinner, but we're all just kind of talking, and the founders are sharing their experience, I guess, just kind of like fostering me through the
Mhm.
steps of how I can do this without her. And
Mhm.
then the women who have done it before were kind of walking me through it. The women who were first time moms that were also afraid were kind of walking me through like what they were feeling. And it was a beautiful experience. And I called my partner that night and I was like, I have something to tell you. I think we can do this on our own,
Yeah.
because I just learned so much, and I was crying, and I was just like, I'm like blasted open. It was so late, and I was like, I'm gonna call you tomorrow. We can talk more about it, and we'll talk more about it when I get home, of course. But like,
Mhm.
I just have to tell you this now because there's a lot
Mhm.
happening here at this trip, and I'm gonna have a lot to share with you when I get home.
Mhm.
I journaled and journaled and journaled every day, and I soaked it all in. So when we got back, we made the decision. My partner was he was scared, but he was on board.
Okay.
He knew that we could do it. And, we said we'll do the necessary research to be as prepared as we can be,
Mhm.
and the rest will be God, and that'll be fine.
Yeah.
We fired my midwife. Well, I mean, fired is a harsh word, but, just had a conversation with her that we've dug deeper into what the birth would be like with her, and realized that we would like to be just us.
Yeah.
She raised eyebrows, she gave
Mhm.
a little sass, was
Mhm.
very confused, was like, expressed her worry, expressed her disappointment,
Mhm.
but gently, and then went on her merry way.
Yeah.
And then the rest was history. 27 weeks. So then the rest of it was just like studying.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And how did that feel for you then, kind of stepping into your power and, after hearing all of these other women talking to you about birthing in this way and then being able to actualize that, when you got home and yeah, firing the midwife. And then what did you do as your, I guess, prenatal care if anything, after the fact, during your studying throughout?
Yeah, there was a lot of fear running through my bones, but actually, it's funny. Now that I'm pregnant again and I know what it's like,
Mm.
I think I feel more fear the second time around.
Okay.
Just because I know what
Mm.
I'm going into
Mhm.
versus the first time I had that, what do they call it? Just like the rookie,
Mhm.
like joy. Like it's,
Mhm.
oh, I'm gonna manifest this beautiful, orgasmic, pain-free, blissful birth now. I've seen all the videos online. I've heard all the podcasts that I could find. Um, I haven't heard any horror stories of free births. There have
Mhm.
been a lot of horror stories I've heard of hospital births. So,
Mhm.
I feel like I set myself free and I was very excited. We found a course online that was basically how to free birth at home.
Yeah.
It was by the same woman. And through that, I was able to really feel like I had a tool belt.
Okay.
Me and my partner and my mother took it as well because my mother was going to be there and I
Okay.
wanted her to like, I need you to do this course with us, please, if you're
Mhm.
going to be there, because I know you love me, but you had all three of us in a hospital, you work
Mhm.
in a hospital, you believe in the
Okay.
medical model, so I really
Mhm.
need you to do some deconditioning in the name of how much you love me and
Yeah.
do this with us. I'm so grateful she did.
So how did she feel about when you fired your midwife and said you two were doing this on your own because she is so in the medical system?
Yeah, my mom is so amazing and really good at hiding when she doesn't think I'm making a good decision.
Okay.
I've done a lot of crazy things in my life, and she's always the parent who's like, or the person really in my entire life who's like, okay, all right, so,
Mm.
like, never one to badger me or put me down with any decision, even if it's something she's worried about. She
Mm-hmm.
just asked a lot of questions. That was all. I could hear the worry in her voice. I knew that she was, wondering what is going on.
Yeah.
But I was hitting, like I felt like I had, like I said, gone through the free birth boot camp after spending so much time with these women that I had to answer to every single one of her questions. Well, what happens if the baby does this? What happens if that? What happened? Like I was trained, I was ready for her. So I was giving her all the answers that seemed to calm her down.
Mhm.
In this course, mom, there's all the things of what if, you
Mhm.
know, bleeding, this, that. Like we're gonna go through this
Mhm.
and we're gonna be prepared enough. Like I'm not an idiot. If a crazy emergency happens, we'll go to the hospital.
Mhm.
But other than that, like babies have been, and that's like the main line. Babies have been born like this since the beginning of time. How was your great grandmother born, mom? How
Yeah.
was that born? In some cottage in Puerto Rico with some other granny there.
Mhm.
Okay. How
Yeah.
was my own father born? My father didn't even approve of this, and he was a free birth.
Okay.
And hospitals were already a thing.
Yeah.
But my granny was one of those people in the 50s that was like strapped down, with the leather straps
Oh
back when they
yeah.
would like give them
Mhm.
crazy drugs and strap them. I can't even imagine being strapped down. And she
Yeah.
was so traumatized from her first
Mm.
few children, that my dad, who's the baby, was born at home with
Mhm.
nothing but a granny midwife from up the street.
Wow. Yeah.
So, anytime he would test me on it, I'd be like, you were a free birth, dude. Like,
Yeah.
no one touched granny when you were coming out.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about?
Mhm.
Um, anyway, so yeah, that process it was fearful, it was joyful, it was testing.
Mm.
I didn't really tell anyone but my partner, my mother, my
Mm.
aunt, who also attended, and my father for a second, but I ended up kind of retracting it and
Mm.
telling him we would have medical guidance there
Okay.
because he was proving to me that he wasn't able to hold it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't want him to be the type of dad to show up or to call, police 911 or to do anything crazy.
Mhm.
So he ended up being left in the shadows. And that was it. No friends, I mean, my free birth friends I had met. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fair. You know, when you're birthing in this way, you have to put up boundaries, and you have
Yeah.
to, sometimes you need to cut people out just for your I don't want to say safety, but yeah, it is kind of like your safety. Like you said, you
Yeah.
don't know, maybe he'd come and call 911 when it was unexpected, and that can become a whole crazy traumatic situation in and of itself. So if you just kind of let it go, that's better for you in the birth space. So I totally
Yeah.
get it, and I respect that.
Yeah, thanks. He lives 10 minutes up the road, like right, like half a mile up the road.
Okay.
So I was like, you're gonna just
Yeah.
oh, we have the midwife still. We have the midwife. Everyone
Mhm.
else in my family didn't even know we fired the midwife. So
Okay.
that felt like a better, and also just for my like energetic tank,
Mhm.
like it was really
Mhm.
depleting to have to do all the explaining
Mhm.
already to my mother and my aunt.
Mhm.
So that was all I had in me.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's fair. Totally. Totally. So then what did that end of pregnancy kind of look like, and moving into the start of your birth journey?
Yeah. We did the course.
Mm,
We felt good. We had like all these notes.
mm,
I'm an herbalist, so I had made tinctures and different medicines that were labeled for my mom, like
mm,
this is for, the contractions if I'm needing a little bit of pain help. These are for anxiety. You can give this to
mhm,
me. You can give this to me. Like I had it really laid out.
mhm,
Notes like I'd like for you to give me coconut water. I'd like for you to give me this
mhm,
and that. We did a bathtub rehearsal. Like we had it all. I felt like I was really organized and ready.
mhm.
Um, and then after that, it was just like I was obsessed with birth videos,
Yeah.
free birth videos specifically. It was all I would look up
Mhm,
just to remind myself every day,
mhm,
multiple times a day, that women do this.
mhm,
And watching other women catching their babies was so liberating. Like, okay, yes, 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 because that other system was really, really ingrained. Like
mhm.
everything I'd seen in movies, everything my mom had told me, I found myself up against it every day.
Okay.
So, like, even when I would imagine my birth, it would be like in hospital again. Like I'd have to like
Mhm,
I always laugh when I'm in spiritual conversations and we think of God. And
mhm.
because I grew up as a Christian
Okay.
in church with my grandfather as a pastor, I like still imagine a man in the sky, a
Okay.
robe. It's like that thing you have to back up and be like, I don't think that's what it is.
Yeah, totally.
And so for me, I had to constantly back up from what I thought birth was going to be every
Right.
day.
Mhm.
And then And then it happened. Would you like me to go into the story?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so my it I started to feel a little bit of light cramping
Mhm,
and my waters started to release, but they were just like trickling like a light pee.
mhm.
And that was on day one. That was in the morning at like 8 a.m.
Okay.
I wish I wouldn't have done anything about it.
Mhm.
I wish I didn't call my mom and aunt and like make a huge deal like we were gonna have a baby in an hour.
Right. Yeah.
I was excited.
Mhm.
And so I already called my mom and aunt. I was like getting things ready and towels and
Mhm.
turning on the birth playlist like within an hour. Having no idea we would have such a long process, which
Mhm.
what felt like a long process. But yeah, light cramping. I'm still totally chilling. I'm just trickling. If this was me now, I would just be like baking bread,
Mhm.
just like vibing, not telling anyone. It could be
Yeah.
days. um, a whole day passed of cramps that I could talk through. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't say there was anything active really happening.
Mhm.
Um, maybe actually until around like 10 p.m. that night.
Okay.
Then I was like, all right, I'm having to breathe. I'm having to get down and really
Mhm.
close my eyes and focus on this. And mom and aunt were right there. My partner was right there. Everyone was amazing. Bouncy ball, bathtub, getting in and out of the tub. Like once it was like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and it was really on,
Mhm.
felt like it was on. I was in the tub by then and coconut water like I'd asked for and things like that. Into day two is when things really ramped up.
Mhm.
I remember not really wanting my contractions to be timed,
Okay.
but they were being timed.
Mhm.
And my mom was timing them and letting me know what was happening. Unfortunately, that ended up being like a real mess in my head because anytime the number would get longer in between contractions, I would think I wasn't progressing, quote unquote, and
Okay.
shorter I am. I wish I wouldn't have had any of that because it was really putting me in my head. But
Mhm.
yeah, at the time, on day two, things were getting close, as they say, like 1 minute. Went an entire day two of the same process, walking around outside, being upstairs in the bed, trying to sleep. Unfortunately, the entire 3.5 day process, barely slept,
Mhm.
didn't eat, just drank,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And so I got really weak,
Mhm.
like after day three. I mean, I could not sleep in between. I maybe would kind of like drowse out for like 30 seconds and then come right back into another wave.
Yeah.
Um, And so on day three
Mhm.
at night, around like 2 a.m., maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m., things really started to shift. There
Mhm.
was starting to like, there was a little crack in the foundation of
Okay.
everything we had planned.
Right.
I have my partner who's worried, but is really a rock and is quite silent and just listening to me. I
Mhm.
wasn't talking much, but just kind of like with me,
Yeah.
um, asking me, am I still able to keep going? Like we're good, right? Really letting me be the authority, which was the
Mhm.
plan
Mhm.
from the beginning. That was like
Mhm.
the main part of my free birth boot camp I learned from those women, which
Mhm.
was like, you are the authority in this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I love my mother, I love my aunt, but their past experiences, both of them have 3 children, both of them born in hospitals. Um, and all three, so all 6 children born in hospitals.
Mhm.
And I could see the shift happen in them.
Okay.
And that being my only like anchor of women in the room, of like guidance in the room, started to falter because they hadn't heard of a 3 day extravaganza. They hadn't heard of anyone going this long. So
Right.
now there's fear.
Yeah.
Now there's worry. Now there's a lot more talking. Now there's a talking amongst themselves. Now there's questions happening to me, which was putting me out of the zone. Are you
Mhm.
sure? Are you sure? I think we should go in. I think we should get checked. Should we call your midwife friend? Call this person. Like, is this, it was really, so things started to actually slow down
Mhm.
to like 5, 6 minutes in between a wave. And in their heads and in my head at the time, that this meant it was getting even worse. Like now I've really slowed down. Now
Right.
I just know like my animal mind was totally on pause because
Mhm.
there was way too much fear in the room, obviously. But so things really went south when there was conflict between my partner who was with me and knowing that like I'm gonna trust this and keep going. I had
Mhm.
already spoken to some of my free birthing friends who were like, you're normal, it's
Mhm.
fine. Get them out of the room, go dark.
Mhm.
Don't even like, you really need to get in the zone now and either be alone or be with just Matt,
Yeah.
if you're feeling like that's what's happening. And I
Mhm.
tried to kind of follow that, but you've got Mama Bear who's really just like coming in with this protection mode. You've got
Mhm.
Auntie Bear, who's her older sister, who's like encouraging her to be even more of a mommy bear.
Yeah.
So some internal conflict happened between them and my partner, unfortunately, which really caused the entire birth space to erupt
Oh
because
gosh.
now we've got a lot of fear, we've got protection, we've got mother hormones and everything just kind of clashing.
Mhm.
So things went south.
Mm.
They ended up leaving the birth space, which felt good at the time because I just needed them gone. But then looking like it also deeper down after I assessed it, days later,
Mm.
hurt me because
Yeah.
I felt like, okay, I wanted you gone and I'm glad you listened to me, but at the same time, you left me.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like, I don't know what I really wanted them to do.
But it makes sense because you invited them into your birth space
Yeah,
with the hopes and understanding that they would be supportive of you throughout the whole time. So I could see how once, and it's, yeah, understandable for your mom getting in that mother bear place of, oh my goodness, what's happening? This is so long. And then, yeah, kind of falling off that track that you had laid down for them. And
yeah,
then, yeah, they have to leave because they can't really be there anymore to see you in this way. Probably, I don't know, obviously I wasn't there,
yeah.
but it makes sense that you would feel sadness. Like, yes, I want you to leave if you're not going to support me, but also I could see how that's, a little bit hurt to the heart because it's like,
It
I wanted you
was.
here because this is such a beautiful moment that we could have shared in. Totally.
Totally, yeah. And unfortunately, they weren't really able to just listen to it was like there actually had been chances
Mm,
to just like show up in the way I needed them to show up in that time. And
yeah.
they kept kind of breaking those chances because they just couldn't. They
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't. There was so much fear. And I
Yeah.
have understanding for that. I do. But anyway, so after hearing them really go into me about going to the hospital for hours, for an entire night,
Wow.
and you're deep in the portal. There's only so much you can fight. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like there's only so much I could really fight.
Yeah.
Um, it got into my head. I thought, okay, I guess I've never really heard of anyone going this long. I guess I'll go in. And then I said, so if we don't have a baby by the morning, by sunrise, let's go in and get checked. And I had a close friend of mine who had a long birth also, a
Mm-hmm.
couple of days, and had gone into the hospital, gotten checked, and then signed herself out, went home and free birth still.
Okay.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, that happened to her. I can do that. I think that's going to be my plan. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just go make sure everything's okay so I can tell everyone everything's okay and I
Mm-hmm.
can know everything's okay. And we'll sign out, give me your AMA paperwork. I'll come back and birth this baby at home like I really want to.
Yeah.
Sunrise came. We went to the hospital. Things were on and popping by the time I got to the hospital. And it's funny, I think it was because I finally felt like I didn't have to be in control,
Okay. Wow.
which is so weird because I didn't trust that system. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought we'd have to go into it with a fight and I'd feel even more out of my zone, which
Mm-hmm.
I did going in. I did a lot of talking. Matt did a lot of talking. They separated us. He had to go sign a ton of paperwork. I'm by myself, making sure they don't do this, don't do that. I want skin to skin. I want delayed, they're like, calm
Mm-hmm.
down. You haven't even started. But I'm just like ready, like, I
Yeah.
didn't want to be here. And
Yeah.
so this is what I want.
Mm,
And I told them all the wrong things. I told them that my water had broken 3 days ago. I told them that I fired my midwife. I didn't have any of the paperwork to show them like glucose testing and this and that and this and that. So they
mm,
kind of treated us like we were dumb hippies who didn't know what we were doing. Spoke to us in a condescending way, like made it seem like it was a real emergency once I told them water had been broken in 3 days, but baby's been moving. I don't have a temperature. Like, we're good.
mhm,
Water's just still trickling down, so there's still fluid in there.
mhm.
But, they were like, it was
Yeah.
just like such a huge emergency to them.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, it was on and popping because really there wasn't that much time. We were only there for like 2 hours and they're hooking me up to IVs, they're checking me,
Mm,
and she was born within like being there for 2 hours. She actually came pretty quickly. I actually don't even remember the thought of going back home crossing my mind once I did get there,
okay.
because there was that strange feeling of it feeling nice
Mhm,
for people to know what they're doing, quote
mhm.
unquote. Like
Okay.
at home, it felt like I was in charge of making sure my mom and aunt were okay
Mm,
while I was in labor.
right.
Um, Whereas when I'm there, they've seen this stuff every day. I can just be,
Mhm,
and they're just gonna walk around me and do what they do.
mhm.
So Yeah, I didn't even think of going home. I let them give me all the IVs, and they ended up giving me antibiotics because I'd been water broken for 3 days. So they just thought maybe I'll get an infection,
Mm.
and they threatened C-section
Mm.
after like the first hour
Yeah.
because I wasn't dilated enough for them. And because of how long the process had already been, it could be dangerous. And also because her heart rate was slowing with every contraction, which is so normal when a baby's in the birth canal. Duh,
Mm-hmm.
they're being squeezed.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that. But at the time it sounded scary.
Yeah.
Just, and I think they know that. They know that when they say to anyone, the
Yeah.
heart rate is lowering with every contraction,
Yeah.
that I'm like,
Yeah, they know
it
what they're
was.
doing when they say these things. They know
Yeah,
how it will impact a woman deep in her birth process. Yeah.
totally. And we almost gave up. I mean, if it wasn't for this one nurse who was an older German woman in her 60s,
Mm-hmm.
who had been a midwife before she was working in labor and delivery in Germany, and
Mm-hmm.
who had attended a ton of home births and was like the only person there who really like cared about physiological birth, because
Oh.
she would kind of fight the other doctors that would come in and say different things. She'd be like, oh, she doesn't need that. She doesn't need that. She doesn't need that. I loved her. She was
Yeah.
amazing. Her name was Bridget. And Bridget, when they came in and said, we might need to prep you for a C-section, um, I looked at Matt. I
Mm.
felt sad,
Mm.
but I was so worn on day
Mm.
4 that I was like, I just want to be my baby.
Yeah.
They're saying heart rate, they're saying a lot of scary things. I just want to be my baby. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was so weak. I was done. I had pretty much given up.
Mm-hmm.
They walked out of the room. We were kind of just silent. And Bridget was like, we don't need a C-section. You can do this. Like,
Mm.
through her really heavy German accent. And was like, got this.
Yeah.
We're gonna just get you ready, like we're gonna breathe. We're gonna sit you up a little bit. It was just like she rallied
Mm-hmm.
before anyone else came back in, because it was just her. And she kind of just like, I don't know, propped my leg up, like checked me again. It was like, you can, like, you're dilated enough. You can push. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
my dilation was, but she said I could push. So we just started. When they came back in to talk more about C-section, she
Mm-hmm.
kind of gave them like the mama bear energy of like, she's ready to push. I just checked her. We don't need
Yeah.
to do any of that. Let's just go. Let's just go
Mm-hmm.
for it. She can do this. So I'm so thankful for her. I ended up having Aura vaginally. They
Mm-hmm.
put a giant mirror in front of me, which was really cool. I got to actually see her come out.
Wow.
My mom was on FaceTime. It was during the pandemic time, so only Matt could be there.
Okay. Yeah.
My mom did want to come. She
Mm-hmm.
showed up at the hospital, and they denied her, which was really sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, Matt was there. Mom was on FaceTime, got to see her come out. We had no idea if she was a boy or girl, and she
Mm.
was a girl, and it was so special just getting her placed on me and
Mm.
kind of fighting them with like, don't wipe her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get off me, everybody, get off me. No hat, no wiping. I want to smell her. I want to touch this
Mhm.
too. You know, I think I had annoyed them so much that they kind of did leave us and
Okay.
let us have like the gooiness of her,
Yeah.
um, without cutting her for a while.
Mhm.
Um, I remember them telling me, "Oh, well, the most delayed we can do is 1 minute," which is not delayed.
No. God.
It was like 1 minute, but they ended up giving us a good like, I guess like 15 minutes,
Okay.
which was fine. It felt like enough at the
I mean,
time.
for a hospital, 15 minutes for them is probably like 3 days, but
Exactly.
yeah, it's kind of like, okay, they waited 15 minutes. That's pretty decent.
We
So,
were grateful.
hmm.
You know, the cord wasn't really bloody. It was actually pretty white at the time. I don't know if they like squeezed it themselves or whatever, but I remember them doing something. But anyway, cut the cord after that. And yeah, unfortunately, what was a beautiful-ish experience overall, because it was hospital and I had just imagined all these other horrific ways it could go down,
Hmm.
did end in a little bit of horror because they
Hmm.
ended up calling Child Protective Services on us
Of course, yeah.
for a neglectful birth plan,
That,
which is outrageous.
yeah, that's so crazy.
She's
I want to
half,
say I can't believe it, but I can totally believe it. Like, that's just so messed up how the system does that.
yeah, she's healthy, she's fat, she's 7.8 pounds. Like
Mhm.
nothing was wrong with her or
Mm.
me, but it was a neglectful birth plan. Something bad could have happened. We're
Ugh,
getting
no.
lectures about what could have happened.
Ugh.
So we ended up having to stay for a longer stay than usual, like through 3.5 days. It was almost 4 days
Oh,
um,
wow.
after, which felt like a freaking month
Yeah.
in the hospital. All of my family was like, why isn't she home yet? Like what's going on? Why are you there for so long? I didn't want to tell anybody about CPS, but they had
Hmm.
to come to the hospital and like observe us. And it was
Oh
just
my
so
gosh.
dehumanizing
Yeah.
to be observed. And that immediate postpartum was really, oh, with the second baby, I'm so looking forward to having an intact immediate postpartum,
Really.
without people interrupting us every 2 hours, all in the middle of the night for medicines and checks and blah, blah, blah. And especially
Hmm.
without CPS making me feel
Hmm.
like we were crazy, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And that's so terrible. Like, how mean is that to to a newly postpartum mother, then have CPS come in and say you didn't do anything right for your child? It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
It was. And it ended up being a 6 week long postpartum CPS ordeal. Like it wasn't just,
Whoa.
we thought it would be just in the hospital. Like they're just
Yeah.
gonna observe you and then let you go and whatever. No,
Hmm.
they had to, they had to, because it was COVID, they didn't come to our house. They said they would have if it wasn't for the pandemic, but they had to do like a FaceTime check of our home
Oh
to see if we
gosh.
had running water, to see if we had food in the fridge, if we had
Oh my
electricity,
God.
to see we were planning on doing co-sleeping, but they were not approving of that. We had to go and buy a cheap little bassinet and
Mm.
show them the bassinet, that we had it there next to the bed and that we understood that we weren't supposed to have a baby in the bed with us.
Oh my
I mean, it
God.
was an awful process.
Yeah, I bet.
Awful. I
Yeah.
even had to leave my postpartum bed to go take a drug test.
Are you serious?
I had to go take a drug test. They cut out a huge chunk of my hair and a urine test to
Whoa.
go and do that. And it got more and more and more dehumanizing. It wasn't until we hired a lawyer at the end of it, because they had told us after the 6 weeks it would be closed.
Mm,
And it kept dragging on. And they were
mm,
going to ask my partner to come in for a drug test. They were going to start interviewing family members. We hired a lawyer and was like, from now on, you won't be speaking to us anymore. You'll be speaking to my attorney. This
mm-hmm.
is too much. And after we threatened, after, not even threatened them, we just informed them that we wouldn't be speaking to them anymore, because it started to feel scary. It started
Yeah.
to feel like they're trying to trap us, because like
Yeah,
things are
totally.
really weird. And why are they having to like bring up all these new things when it was supposed to be done?
Mm.
Um, it didn't feel protective at all. It was supposed to be protecting
Mm,
the child. It felt like you have more than enough evidence that she's like fine here.
mm.
Um, so once we told them that there was an attorney involved, they closed the case immediately.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Isn't that insane?
Yep. And imagine how many other families that were like you that didn't have an attorney, and that process probably just dragged out for more weeks or more months, and just, really
Yeah.
made it such a hard, traumatizing thing for that whole family. It's
Yes.
so heartbreaking.
Yeah. And it started to get spicier. It's why we hired the attorney, because we weren't taking her in to the doctor for all of her little newborn appointments, because that was
Mhm.
not my intention. She was totally fine. I was not going to take her to the doctor. I was definitely not about to take her to get any newborn vaccinations. They had
Mhm.
already heard word that we didn't give her the ones that she was supposed to get after she was born,
Mhm.
like right when she was supposed to, right when she came out, the K vitamin and whatever else they give, hepatitis. So that was a problem. They were going to keep harassing us.
Oh my God.
And anyway, yeah, so that was closed, and that was that journey. It was unfortunate. There was some stuff to patch up with my family as well.
Mhm.
As things got a little, spicy with my mom and my aunt, and
Mhm.
just like them coming and wanting to see the baby, but me actually wanting to debrief,
Yeah.
not wanting to just like forget what happened, and really wanting to talk about how it happened, what happened. I still
Mhm.
love you. Like, obviously, you can still be here and hold the baby and whatever, but like, I really, for my postpartum,
Mhm.
needed to go over it and talk about it and express my feelings now that I'm like coherent and have food in my belly and can actually tell you what I feel
Yeah.
about how you behaved and how it all went down, and
Hmm.
that took a while too. But yeah, it was a learning journey, and I'm still learning from it, planning my second.
Totally. That's big energy that, just through the birth and through that immediate postpartum time, that's big energy to work through. And yeah, to have to go through such a sensitive, vulnerable body. Yeah. Wow.
It was big.
Mhm. Oh, one question can I ask though? So because you were able to have Aura's umbilical cord attached to the placenta for about 15 minutes, do you remember what happened to your placenta? Like how long did that stay within your womb? Did you get a physiologic birth of that? Or because you're in the hospital, did they do the really violent kind of manual extraction?
I think they pretty much did like a manual extraction. I'm pretty sure she pulled it out
Mm,
um almost immediately after Aura was born,
yeah.
and then they put it in like a bucket,
Okay.
and then we had that bucket for a little bit.
Okay. And did you take it home or did they
I
take
did
it
take it
back?
home.
You
I
did.
fought for it. It was one of the things I was telling them
Good.
about when I first was being wheeled in. I was like, and I want my placenta. They're like, okay, calm down. But I did end up getting my placenta. The midwife, that's actually on video too.
Okay.
The hospital midwife was like, well, it's funny. Bridget, the German lady who was totally like on my side, was like, yeah, you can take it home. And then at the same time, the other midwife there said, well, we don't think you should because you've been open for 3 days and it could have a, infection in it or whatever. So they said at the same time, I'm looking at them like, and I could tell they didn't get along because they had a lot of like
Oh, clashing moments.
flashing moments like that. But yeah, I knew, okay, well, one nurse thinks I can, so I'm just going to keep fighting this.
Hmm.
It did let me know they don't think that I should consume it if I'm going to take it home because it
Okay.
could probably have an infection in it because there was so long.
Mm.
So yeah, I actually was going to have it encapsulated, but I changed my plan and ended up burying it here on our land. But I'm glad I got to take it home. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's my organ. I grew that.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter if it's infected or not. Like that is part of your body and part of your
Yeah.
baby. So you should be able to take that home.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they kept it in the hospital, it would have been another probably thing to use against you in that whole CPS drama, you
Seriously. Yeah.
know?
Or like someone's homework and schooling to like look at and analyze.
Yeah.
It's just like that's fine. It's not
Yeah.
something for you to study.
Totally. Yeah. And throughout all of this stress in that early postpartum time, how was your breastfeeding journey with Aura?
I am so blessed to say it was easeful. We
Okay.
had zero hiccups. She latched right on. It was the
Mm.
craziest feeling. Unfortunately, I remember having a flashback long after she was born. I mean, maybe she was like 6 months, maybe even 8, 10 months,
Mhm.
of actually how violent the first latch was because we didn't get to slowly do that. She didn't
Yeah.
get to like discover my breast, discover my nipple, take her time latching on. One
Mm.
of the nurses was like, okay, it's time to breastfeed her, and like grabbed my boob without my consent. I know, and
Mm.
it like flashed. It was like something I kind of blacked out in the moment,
Yeah.
like squeezed it right into her and kind of like shoved her head on there and just like really like I was almost like not even ready. It was just
Yeah.
like boom, boom, boom. She did it so fast and
Yeah.
Aura latched right on. And it was like the craziest feeling because it was so much stronger than I thought it would ever be,
Hmm.
which was magical. But yeah, looking back, I had a flashback one day. I don't know if it was seeing one of my other friends breastfeed, and I was like, oh, wait, that was actually really terrible. I did not
Yeah.
like that at all. But
Mm.
oh yeah, she was just a booby baby and still is. And she's 3 years old. She's
Oh,
not breastfeeding anymore. I tried to make it to 2.
okay.
We stopped right before she turned 2.
Mm.
But if she sees my boobs now, she's just like hard eyes. She's- I'm like, get away.
Aw.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, that's a really beautiful story that you have to share, even though the ending with all that CPS bullshit was
Yes.
straight up just bullshit and
Yeah.
obviously didn't need to happen. But I see it as a way for the hospital to punish you because,
Yep.
like you said, you came in and you said that you fired your midwife, your waters had been open for 3 days. That's a no-no in their book. So if you didn't follow their quote unquote rules and come in asking for guidance and assistance with your birth, it should just be, okay, great, how you feeling, let's get this baby out. But of course they've got to punish you, make you know that that's not right, and that next time you better come back to the hospital system and follow all the rules for your baby, it's just absurd that things like that happen, but it's so normal and common. It's just almost like pretty much it is accepted, and it's just like that's the pretty much regular narrative that happens so often, which is so baffling.
So sad.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm so glad that this time around, like you said, it was a big learning experience and you've learned from that. And now you're just pregnant and you're just going to have your
I'm just
baby.
pregnant.
And that's all it is. Like you're just
It is
pregnant and you're just
amazing.
gonna birth your baby. I mean, it's not complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated.
Yeah, it has been so nice. No one's touched me. Almost no one's questioned me.
Mm,
Oh yeah. I
mm.
feel it in my bones. This one's gonna be different.
Nice. Yeah, it is. I believe that for you because you're a new woman after all of that experiences, and yeah, you know what to expect this time as well.
That's
So.
right. That's right.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. And yeah, I'm really grateful that I got to hear this side of the story. So thank you for sharing that
Of
in the
course, yeah.
you did. And I'm so excited for this next birth. And if you ever want to come back and share about baby number 2, I would love to hear that story as well and hear how you got your beautiful sacred postpartum with baby on your chest and nobody bothering you at home.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, I'm grateful to have learned without what I would call a significant amount of trauma, like I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was okay
Yeah.
for the most part. So I just got to really like soak in all the lessons for what they were. And
Totally.
now I have a wise woman who's sort of walking me through,
Mm-hmm.
a very educated wise woman who's walking me through the process of
Mm-hmm.
like what's happening in my body. We have like Zoom calls twice a month and we just talk about it as friends.
Yeah.
And she might be there, she might not,
Mm-hmm.
but it will not be in the capacity of the midwife.
Yeah.
Here's a woman who has been to births,
Mm-hmm.
and I can look her in the eye when things start to get disorienting.
Mm-hmm.
They almost inevitably do.
Mm-hmm.
And she will look at me and say, "You're having a baby."
Yeah.
And I will say, "Okay, yeah."
Yeah.
Or I might not say anything. That's what I felt like I needed
Mm-hmm.
with my first, was really someone who's like, "Hey, it's all good, girl. You still feel your baby, right? Baby's still moving. Waters are still leaking. Everything's juicy. You're not hot. You're good, girl. Here's a spoonful of honey for
Mm-hmm.
some glucose to keep you going." I didn't get any of that. I was just like drinking water for days. And we got this.
Yeah.
I think that's all I needed to stay home and keep going.
Yeah.
I didn't get that, and that's okay. That was the journey. And this time I have it planned. I have postpartum like 10 times more planned
Nice.
for people who are just like signed up for their shifts
Nice.
and ready to go. And yeah, no one in my business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to it. I have fear. I
Mm-hmm.
have fear just because I really want to manifest what people say is like a pain-free experience and I've been reading about that's possible. You're not just a unicorn of a woman to manifest that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Pain and pleasure are really on the same thin line.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about the choosing of the pain that can cross you over into pleasure or into like a blissful state and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. I've been like really into that as an intention. And also knowing that I don't want to make that like put all my eggs in that basket,
Yeah.
so that's like where I'm at now. It's like, oh gosh, I'm doing it again. It hurts so bad. It hurts so bad. And, just feeling like scared about that really like basic part of birth, just like the
Mm.
sensations.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, a baby's gonna be born. So
Exactly. Yeah. Totally. You're gonna have to go through it anyway. So it's good. It's great that you have the fear there because it means that you really deeply care. But yeah, like you said, a baby's gonna be born, whether it's painful, pleasurable, and you can create that in your mind. So yeah, you got to hold that intention.
I can do hard things.
Exactly. Exactly. You are a woman, you're designed for this. Your body is just, that's its physiologic blueprint, is to birth babies into the world. So we got to get out of our heads and into our bodies and just know that it's a sacred ceremony that our body goes through and just let it happen.
Yeah, and this one's been so interesting to ride the wave of trust in God and in my body, not having any ultrasounds, any testing, anything.
Mhm.
So the only confirmation I have is that my belly is big
Yeah.
and I feel a being in there.
Mm.
It's kicking me every day and moving around and feels really strong.
Mm.
And I have a stethoscope that I've heard the heartbeat with.
Mm.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's my prenatal care right there.
Yeah.
And good food, way better food than with my first.
Mm-hmm.
And movement, all the other self-care things. But
Yeah.
so sometimes I go into a dark hole like, what if the baby comes out with one eye?
Yeah.
Because I didn't have that medical authority. It's like still in me to look in there and show me that everything's growing right and there's two eyes and a nose and a mouth and.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I feel much better about it this time. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And it's a strong line of thinking to decondition from,
Yeah.
because it's been however many years that that's the same narrative you've heard and heard and heard on repeat, repeat, repeat. So it's really ingrained in there. So it is really tough to trust oneself and say, no, I'm right. It's okay. If the baby has one eye, then guess the baby has one eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it's
Right.
like at that point where you're not going to do anything about it, I'm assuming. So it's like,
Right.
the baby
No.
has one eye, then
My
we
cute
just
cyclops.
just have a cute little cyclops, and there we go. We're just living our lives and just loving that
That's
one
right.
eye.
That is right. Yeah. It's gonna be so beautiful and interesting to watch my daughter
Mm,
grow up, and then if she chooses to become a mother,
yeah.
how her walk is going to be,
Yeah.
because from the very beginning, she understood it to be a sovereign act.
Yeah.
And I grew up with the stories of, oh, you took 12 hours, Veladya. You were my longest birth, and it was so hard. And I had an
Mm,
episiotomy, and they pulled you out with a suction, and you were born as a cone head, and never
mm,
even thinking, like always, we would always laugh at these things, not
mm,
thinking it was like, whoa, like that was
mhm.
intense what you went through to birth me.
Totally.
And then the stories of my brothers as well. And that was just what I always had in my head, is birth my whole life. Ugh. And then here we are 30 years later having to do it and just break it down. And now Aura already knows a baby's
Mhm.
gonna come out of mommy's yoni. She's seen birth videos online. She knows it's gonna be at home. She says, maybe you're gonna have the baby in a pool, mommy, and
Aw.
the baby's gonna be slimy. And she's already down for what it looks like, what it's gonna be. That's
Yeah.
gonna be so cool to
Yeah.
just, yeah.
And that's the beauty of children too, because they know, they're so tapped into that. When you have a birth at home, they're so into it because they just, in their body, they just know that like this is what it's meant to be. And I find it so funny that everyone says, oh, you shouldn't have your baby with you when you're, birthing at home, having your free birth. It'll be traumatic. but it's actually no, having your baby, your child there while you're birthing in hospital, that's going to be traumatic for them to see. Like their mother strapped down to the bed because they have fetal heart monitors, because they've got all these IVs in their body and they're not being listened to and they're probably screaming because they're in pain. Like that's traumatic. Seeing a mother in her power, that's not traumatic. That's a really beautiful way to have them step into this way of what their female bodies can do if it's a little girl, or if it's a little boy, seeing how amazing women are and like how normal it is. So that I love that Aura's so excited for it and that she wants to be there. And it's such a beautiful thing to hear of elder children witnessing their younger siblings come into the world in such beautiful, peaceful ways.
Yeah, she's really excited. I think I'll have my mom there again to be with her in the times that I feel like I might want her to not be with me, asking me 1,000 questions and touching. I assume she's a talker, so I think there might be times I want alone time. So we'll see how it goes, because I have a little bit of fear around my mom being there again, to be honest.
Yeah.
But with having this wise woman there, I think that'll be like the authority, even though I'm the authority, but in her eyes, another authority of this space to kind of like hold me.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah.
Versus just
for her comfort to know that there's someone who has experienced it. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I'm so excited for you to bring this baby through. That's beautiful. Such amazing.
3 more months.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to say on this beautiful pregnancy, birth, postpartum experience before we wrap it up?
No, just to all the women out there, we live in a really beautiful age where we have all this technology. I mean, of course, it sometimes doesn't serve us, but the beautiful part of it is that there are stories out there. So, like, you are not alone, no matter what background you come from, no matter what experience you come from. There are so many stories out there through this podcast, through other podcasts, through YouTube videos, through books. Like, you can do it the way you dream of doing it. Just look for the examples if that's what makes you feel better, and you can do it. Yeah, believe in yourself. I could have done it. There was a lot of doubt, but we can do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for those words. And if any woman would like to connect with you to hear of your journey a little bit more deeper, or just talk to you about birth, or how can they reach out to you?
Yeah. So my online platform is called Veladya Organica. It's Veladya, Veladya Organica. So you can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and that's pretty much it. I tried TikTok, but they don't really care about me on TikTok. Okay. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And then veladyaorganica.com is where I share herbs and some of my online offerings. And you can contact me directly on there and we can chat and connect, and it'll be great.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Veladya.
Thank you.
Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Freebirthing in Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Freebirthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.